When a Sigma empath cuts you off, it doesn't explode, it evaporates. No goodbye, no closure, no explanation, just distance. To most people, it feels cold or cruel, but what they don't understand is that a Sigma empath never leaves impulsively. They leave after observing everything. Every manipulation, every half-truth, every pattern of energy that told them the connection was no longer real. By the time they walk away, they've already grieved you in silence. This kind of detachment isn't revenge, it's self-preservation. Sigma empaths don't believe in long confrontations or emotional scenes. They've spent too many years trying to explain their pain to people who never cared to understand it. So instead of wasting words, they simply disappear. Because when an empath becomes silent, it's not confusion, it's clarity. They stop chasing closure because they've learned that closure isn't something you get from others, it's something you give yourself. They stop explaining because they finally realized that people who valued the connection wouldn't need an explanation in the first place. And that silence, it's their boundary, their healing, and their power all wrapped in one. If you've ever been the one who vanished to protect your peace, or the one left wondering why someone so calm suddenly walked away, this video is for you. Subscribe to Brainy Empath for more deep dives into emotional intelligence, energy dynamics, and the psychology of self-protection. And tell me in the comments, have you ever cut someone off quietly, not out of hate, but because you were finally done explaining yourself? The pattern recognition moment. It never happens during a fight. It doesn't explode in anger or end in words. It happens in silence, a single, piercing moment when the Sigma empath sees the pattern. The tone changes, the excuses repeat, the same cycle begins to unfold, and suddenly, everything clicks. They've been here before, the emotional high, the subtle manipulation, the slow erosion of peace. In that instant, something deep inside them whispers, "Not again." That's the moment the connection ends, even if the other person doesn't know it yet. Sigma empaths don't cut people off impulsively. They study behavior the way others read stories, scanning energy shifts, inconsistencies, and emotional undercurrents until the truth reveals itself. They give chances, forgiveness, and understanding, often too much, but when they finally see the full loop, when they realize the person isn't changing, just adapting their tactics, something shuts off inside them. The switch flips, the empathy remains, but the access disappears. To the outsider, the disappearance seems cold, abrupt, or confusing, but the empath has already lived the ending in their mind 100 times. They've replayed the apologies that never came, the conversations that led nowhere, the promises that dissolved under pressure. They've exhausted every possibility of being understood. So when they go silent, it's not shock, it's resolution. In that quiet recognition, they reclaim their power. They realize they don't need proof to trust their intuition. They don't need closure to walk away. They finally understand that not everyone deserves a seat at their table just because they once offered warmth. The Sigma empath's goodbye is invisible, but it's absolute. No confrontation, no announcement, just a clean, energetic exit. And that's what makes it so powerful. Narcissists, manipulators, and emotional takers can argue with your words, but they can't argue with your absence. They can't debate silence. Once the Sigma empath recognizes the pattern, they disengage from the game entirely. They stop trying to heal what thrives on hurting. They don't slam the door, they simply vanish through it. Because when a Sigma empath finally sees the pattern, they don't just end the relationship, they end the cycle. And nothing terrifies a manipulator more than someone who no longer plays the same game. Energetic mismatch, awareness. There's a quiet point in every connection where words stop mattering, when the Sigma empath no longer listens to what someone says, but feels what their energy says instead. It's subtle, almost imperceptible at first. Conversations that used to flow now feel heavy. Interactions leave them drained instead of inspired, and peace, that rare currency they value most, begins to disappear. That's when the Sigma empath knows the truth they can't unsee. The energies no longer match. For most people, relationships end through conflict or distance, but for Sigma empaths, they end through vibration. They read people beyond the surface: tone, silence, body language, even the unspoken tension between words. They sense when authenticity fades, when connection becomes performance, when affection turns into obligation. It's not judgment, it's resonance. And when the frequency shifts too far, they feel it in their body like static. Their intuition tightens, their mind grows foggy, and even laughter feels forced. That's when they realize this isn't alignment anymore. It's attachment. The narcissist, the manipulator, the taker, they often can't understand what's happening. They think the Sigma empath is distant, moody, overly sensitive, but what's really happening is calibration. The empath's soul has started to reject what's artificial. Their spirit can no longer harmonize with energy built on control, deceit, or pretense. And rather than fight the current, they simply drift away. This withdrawal isn't punishment, it's self-preservation. Sigma empaths don't argue about energy, they respond to it. Once they sense that someone's presence disrupts their peace more than it nourishes it, the exit has already begun. Their replies shorten, their tone flattens, they stop oversharing, not out of bitterness, but out of balance. When the energies no longer match, staying becomes a kind of self-betrayal, so the Sigma empath quietly steps back into solitude, the only place where they can recharge and return to truth. They don't announce their departure because energy doesn't need to explain itself. It simply moves where it belongs. That's the beauty of their detachment. It's not dramatic, but it's final. When they walk away, they're not rejecting the person. They're honoring the vibration that no longer fits. And once they make that energetic realization, no apology, no guilt, and no manipulation can pull them back. Emotional overdraft fatigue. There comes a breaking point that doesn't look like a breakdown, it looks like silence. After months, maybe years of overgiving, overexplaining, and overfeeling, the Sigma empath reaches emotional bankruptcy. They've been withdrawing from their own peace to fund everyone else's chaos, offering comfort to people who never deposited care in return, and one day the emotional account just runs dry. There's no dramatic announcement, no explosive confrontation, just the quiet realization. I have nothing left to give that doesn't cost me myself. This is what emotional overdraft fatigue feels like. It's not just exhaustion, it's depletion of the soul. The empath starts noticing how heavy conversations feel, how certain people's presence creates instant anxiety, how they've been sacrificing rest for relationships that don't restore them. They remember the times they stayed up listening to someone's pain while their own went unheard, the countless "it's fine" that were never fine, the apologies they gave for simply having needs. It's the slow erosion of self disguised as kindness. And when that awareness finally hits, something fundamental shifts. The Sigma empath stops chasing balance in one-sided connections. They stop playing the emotional savior. They stop justifying why they're so tired, because now they understand the cause. They've been bleeding empathy into people who see compassion as a resource to exploit, not a gift to appreciate. That's the moment they withdraw, not out of resentment, but necessity. Their silence isn't revenge, it's recovery. They retreat to rebuild, to refill what's been emptied, and for the first time in a long time, they start giving their energy back to themselves. They rest without guilt. They say no without explanation. They let messages go unanswered because they finally know peace isn't laziness, it's healing. The people who once relied on their endless empathy will call them cold, distant, selfish. But the Sigma empath knows better. This isn't coldness, it's correction. You can't keep nurturing people who starve you in return. Emotional overdraft fatigue is the soul's final alarm, a message that says, you've been overdrawn for too long. And when a Sigma empath hears it, they don't beg for understanding. They walk away, recharge, and promise themselves they'll never let anyone take that much again. Detachment as emotional detox. When a Sigma empath finally detaches, it's not because they stop caring, it's because caring too much nearly destroyed them. Their detachment isn't ice, it's medicine. It's the soul's way of flushing out emotional toxins that built up from years of absorbing pain that wasn't theirs to carry. They've spent so long being the emotional filter for other people's chaos, the one who listens, soothes, and forgives, that they forgot what it feels like to breathe without guilt. So when they go quiet, when they disappear, they're not rejecting you. They're detoxing. At first, the silence feels strange, even to them. They are used to explaining everything, their thoughts, their motives, their absence. But detachment teaches them something revolutionary. You don't owe an explanation for your healing. They stop apologizing for needing space. They stop feeling bad for not answering every message, not fixing every crisis, and little by little, the noise inside them starts to fade. In that quiet, the Sigma empath begins to hear themselves again. They start distinguishing between empathy and enmeshment, between love and obligation. They realize that peace isn't the absence of emotion, it's the absence of emotional pollution. Detachment doesn't kill their compassion, it purifies it. It strips away the performative empathy, the endless caretaking, the guilt-based kindness. What remains is something clean, genuine love without self-loss. To the narcissist or manipulator, this silence feels like punishment. They'll call it cold, arrogant, or unfeeling. But in truth, detachment is the Sigma empath's reset button. It's where they drain the poison, recalibrate their intuition, and restore their boundaries. It's the moment they stop reacting and start responding, not to others, but to their own inner rhythm. And the irony? When they return, they're even more powerful, calmer, sharper, untouchable. The old triggers no longer work, the emotional hooks no longer bite, because through detachment, they've learned the most profound truth. You can love deeply and still walk away. You can care without clinging. Detachment for the Sigma empath isn't an ending, it's purification. It's where they shed the emotional residue of everyone who misused their light, step into stillness, and rediscover what their energy feels like untainted. It's not coldness, it's clarity. And that clarity, it's freedom disguised as distance. Boundaries without broadcast. When a Sigma empath sets a boundary, you won't hear a speech, see a dramatic announcement, or get a warning message that says, "I'm done." You'll just feel the shift, quiet, invisible, irreversible. Their energy retracts, their attention thins, and their heart, once wide open, now guards its doors with silence. Because Sigma empaths don't announce boundaries, they embody them. They don't tell you what they won't allow anymore, they simply stop allowing it. For most of their lives, they believed boundaries had to be explained, that people would respect them if only they understood the pain they caused. But time taught them a hard truth. Those who truly value you don't need long explanations, and those who don't will twist them into guilt. So the Sigma empath learned to protect their peace without advertising it. They stopped teaching people how to treat them and started walking away from those who refused to learn. To others, it feels like a sudden cold front, a change they can't quite define. Messages get shorter. The empath no longer rushes to comfort or overextend. The warmth that once felt endless now has a border. But to the Sigma empath, this isn't coldness, it's maintenance. It's choosing stillness over stress, alignment over approval. They don't need to defend their distance, it defends itself through peace. Narcissists and energy drainers hate this silence because they depend on reaction, on knowing they can pull the empath back into emotional negotiation. But when the Sigma empath enforces boundaries without announcement, there's nothing to push against. Their calm becomes untouchable. Their detachment becomes disarming. The game collapses because one player has quietly left the board. Boundaries without broadcast are the ultimate evolution of self-respect. They're not built on anger, but on clarity. The Sigma empath doesn't need revenge or recognition, just space to breathe freely again. And that's the power of this quiet discipline. No conflict, no closure, no scene, just peace. When they stop explaining their boundaries, it's not because they've become harsh, it's because they've finally become wise. They've learned that energy speaks louder than any declaration, and once they've drawn the line in silence, no manipulation, guilt, or charm can ever cross it again. The spiritual weight of overexposure. There's a kind of exhaustion that goes deeper than the body. It sits in the soul. It's what happens when a Sigma empath has given too much of themselves for too long, when they've been emotionally naked in front of people who only came to consume, not to connect. They didn't mean to overexpose. They simply trusted that vulnerability would be met with respect. Instead, it was met with curiosity, entitlement, or manipulation. And slowly, piece by piece, the empath starts to feel the weight, the spiritual heaviness of being too seen by people who never truly looked. Every empath reaches this moment. It starts with subtle signs, anxiety before certain conversations, guilt after oversharing, that strange emptiness after helping someone who never asks how you're doing in return. The Sigma empath begins to realize that openness without discernment isn't healing, it's draining. They see how their transparency became a weapon in the wrong hands, how their honesty became ammunition, how people started mistaking their kindness for consent. To cross boundaries, that's when something sacred happens, a withdrawal, not from love, but from exposure. They begin pulling their energy back, piece by piece, not out of bitterness, but reverence for their own spirit. They learn that not everyone deserves access to their emotional landscape, that not every connection deserves intimacy. Their silence becomes their sanctuary. To those who fed off their openness, this transformation feels like betrayal. You've changed, they'll say, but what they really mean is, I can't feed off you anymore. The Sigma empath no longer performs emotional availability for people who mistake it for obligation. They become selective with their truth, intentional with their presence, sacred with their peace. The spiritual weight begins to lift. They breathe easier, they feel lighter, because every boundary they rebuild reclaims another piece of their soul. They start to understand that being seen by everyone isn't power, being understood by the right ones is. This is what spiritual maturity looks like for a Sigma empath, learning to love deeply while remaining energetically protected. They no longer crave visibility, they crave alignment. And once they honor that, they become what they were always meant to be. Not everyone's healer, but their own sanctuary, the misunderstanding of their absence. When a Sigma empath disappears, the world doesn't understand it. To some, it looks like abandonment. To others, arrogance. But to the Sigma empath, it's neither. Their absence is not a punishment, it's protection. What people mistake as coldness is actually the quiet work of healing. After giving, explaining, forgiving, and trying too hard for too long, they reach a point where their presence costs too much. So they leave not to prove a point, but to save their peace. The irony is that their disappearance confuses the very people who caused it. The narcissist, the energy drainer, the emotionally unavailable, they see the absence as overreaction, drama, or ghosting, but they never saw the exhaustion that came before it. The sleepless nights, the silent tears, the moments when the empath smiled while breaking inside. They never noticed the hundreds of small goodbyes that happened long before the final one. Michelle. Because a Sigma empath never leaves suddenly, they leave silently after realizing their words no longer make a difference. Their absence speaks louder than confrontation ever could. It's a mirror held up to the other person's behavior, a reflection of every ignored boundary and every unreciprocated effort. But the Sigma empath doesn't leave hoping to be chased or understood. They already know they won't be. Their silence isn't manipulation, it's closure. And while others might misinterpret their distance as indifference, it's actually the deepest act of self-respect. They've realized that staying where they aren't valued slowly erases their identity, that loving people who refuse to grow only teaches self-neglect. So they retreat into solitude, not out of hate, but out of hope. Hope to return to themselves whole again. Some will gossip about their withdrawal, others will label it cold, aloof, or uncaring, but those who truly understand them will know the truth. Absence is their language of peace. It's how they reset their spirit, refill their empathy, and reclaim their energy. Because when a Sigma empath disappears, it's not the end of connection, it's the start of restoration. Their absence is not an exit, it's a return. Back to clarity, back to balance, and back to the one person who never took them for granted, themselves. Peace as the final goodbye. For the Sigma empath, peace is not what comes after the goodbye, it is the goodbye. There's no need for final words, no dramatic exit, no last attempt to explain the pain they endured. Their closure doesn't come from confrontation, it comes from stillness. After walking through every storm, trying to love, understand, and forgive, they reach a sacred realization. Peace is the only goodbye that doesn't reopen old wounds. They stop chasing explanations that will never be honest. They stop offering compassion to people who only interpret it as weakness. They stop waiting for an ending that feels fair, because fairness doesn't exist in manipulation. So instead, they let go softly. No resentment, no hatred, just silence wrapped in understanding. They know that revenge chains you to the past, but peace sets you free from it. To outsiders, this kind of ending looks emotionless, almost too calm, but what they don't see is the fire that came before it, the tears, the confusion, the self-doubt, the nights replaying conversations hoping for clarity that never came. When peace finally arrives, it's not a lack of emotion. It's the healing of every emotion that came before. It's not numbness, it's relief. The narcissist or manipulator may try to provoke one last reaction, a text, a rumor, a bait for validation, but the Sigma empath doesn't bite. They've learned that peace isn't passive, it's protection. It's not silence born from fear, it's silence born from mastery. They no longer need to prove their worth or correct anyone's version of the story. Their calm speaks louder than any closure ever could. And that's the beauty of it. Peace becomes the loudest goodbye imaginable. It's the sound of a heart reclaiming its rhythm, of energy returning home. The Sigma empath doesn't slam doors, they simply walk through them and never look back. Because they've learned that the most powerful ending isn't one that hurts the other person, it's the one that finally heals you. Peace for the Sigma empath is an escape, it's evolution. It's the moment they stop trying to be understood and start living in harmony with who they've become. That's not absence, that's arrival. In the end, the Sigma empath doesn't win by proving a point, they win by finding peace. Their silence isn't emptiness, it's transformation. It's the sound of boundaries forming, of intuition sharpening, of a heart that finally learned to choose itself. The world may call it distance, but in truth, it's healing, because peace is not weakness, it's mastery. And when a Sigma empath reaches that level of calm, nothing and no one can pull them back into chaos again. You don't owe explanations for the peace you've earned. You don't have to justify walking away from noise. The moment you protect your energy without guilt, you've already said everything that needs to be said. If this message resonated with you, subscribe to Brainy Empath for more deep storytelling on emotional healing, intuition, and self-mastery. And tell me in the comments, was there a moment in your life when peace felt like the most powerful goodbye you could give?